Hello, everyone, and welcome to this evening's webinar. My name is Katrin Häuser. I'm the director of Little Yoga Space. We haven't had one of these webinars for a little while, so very excited to have them back after the summer break, I guess we could say. Today, I'm joined by Lucy again. Lucy already actually offered one of these webinars and it was a huge success, and so I'm delighted to be sharing the screen with her again today. We will be talking about yoga and Ayurveda again, but this time with a focus on overthinking. Now, when we are thinking of the physical practice of yoga and maybe Ayurvedic medicine, overthinking might not be what comes to mind straight away as, you know, something that maybe could be addressed with this practice. But I am quite sure that Lucy will tell us all about that. Lucy is a yoga teacher at the studio, mostly offering special events on a kind of monthly basis, quite often together with Martina, who's also here today. And Lucy herself has come to actually yoga even in the first place, really with that whole mind stuff at the kind of heart of the intention to calm anxiety and stress levels that she was experiencing at the time in her life, and found a way to manage that and to regulate that through the practice of yoga. And it's so nice, I guess, now to study Ayurveda and be sort of actually coming back to that kind of starting point again, and to realize really how powerful all of these practices are, but also how integrated they are. So I'm going to stay here as your host. If anyone wants to ask any questions, please use the chat function and we'll get back to those at the end of the webinar where we have some time. Those of you catching this as a recording, maybe you want to just press the pause button and make sure you already have a little bit of space available where you can lie down at the end, and also where you can sit comfortably on the floor, maybe with a cushion, as Lucy will be sharing a couple of practical exercises also at the end. So that's enough from me. I'm going to hand over to you, Lucy. You just have to switch your sound back on. And yeah, it's all yours.
Okay, hi. Nice to see some familiar faces there from my, I think actually from my last community class. So hi. Just a disclaimer that I do have my dog here and she can be a little bit noisy. I was saying, ironically, she is quite stressful and a bit of an overthinker herself. So she can bark sometimes if people walk past the door, but hopefully she'll be quiet. But yeah, it was interesting actually. You know, I had the concept of the webinar, and then as I was writing it, I was kind of like, oh, this is like for me, this has been my whole experience with yoga. This was why I came, why I, you know, carried on teaching, why I wanted to teach, and what I try and get across to people, because it's not always easy to really describe what yoga is to people, you know, people who've maybe not ever done it, or, you know, they've gone to a vinyasa flow class, which of course is yoga also, but you know, there's just so much depth to it. And, you know, really it was designed around calming the mind. You know, that's what it is about at the core of it. So, you know, and there's just so much useful stuff there that I've found so helpful through Hatha yoga, non-dual tantra yoga, and Buddhism. Also a lot of good stuff in Buddhism, or a lot of teachers that I really like are Buddhist teachers. You know, and it has always been a kind of realization that there is no separation between the mind and the body. And it is a, you know, it's a journey back to yourself, really, a kind of unraveling, peeling the onion, as they say in Buddhism, peeling back the layers of the onion. Yeah. And so, you know, I learned over time that it wasn't about being kind of good at yoga poses or being able to do super advanced stuff, which is also fine. You know, that can have its own lessons as well. But really, it's about these kind of strong mental traits that you can form over time with yoga, creating awareness so we can see ourselves clearly, You know, and even if you want to do these fancy poses, it's like, if you're in that pose, can you breathe? Can you be present? You know, can you be with something that feels difficult, even, you know, when it's hard? You know, and that would really be the sign of an advanced yoga practice, is like, what are we actually doing in that moment? You know, can we just be with ourselves as we are? And that was kind of my journey into it. I'll talk a little bit more about that later as well. But anyway, I just wanted to start with just a little bit of breathing. We're just going to take 3 breaths. So it's just a way to kind of center ourselves. I guess we've all got quite busy minds, because if we're here in the first place, so it's quite good just to kind of bring us into the zone. So super simple breath. You can close your eyes if you like, or just have a soft gaze, and just take a nice deep breath in through the nose. And then when you've got to the top of the inhale, take another small inhale. See if you can kind of fill the lungs a little bit more. And then exhale out through the mouth, as if you're blowing out a candle. Nice. And just take 2 more like that. So an inhale through the nose. And when you feel like you've got to the top, see if you can let in a bit more oxygen. And then exhale out through the mouth. Nice. And just take 1 more like that. Inhale up to the top. A little bit more. And then exhale out through the mouth. Nice. And then you can just open your eyes when you've finished. Nice. It's just a nice way to kind of arrive a little bit. Okay, so overthinking. So we would define it as a process of repetitive and unproductive, generally, thoughts. So this can be kind of rumination about the past, the present, worrying about the future. And basically, we're kind of talking about thought loops that don't ever seem to have a resolution, even though it feels like that's what we're trying to do. And, you know, I found it's quite a big spectrum of, you know, when you say to people, oh, I'm just overthinking it a bit, you know, that could mean mild worry about something, or it could mean you're completely consumed with your thoughts, you know. So it's quite hard to, 1, gauge where other people are at, and 2, express it yourself to other people unless they've experienced it. Same with other kind of manifestations of stress and anxiety. It's a wide spectrum. And at its core, really, again, with like a lot of stress and anxiety manifestations of, it's a self-protection mechanism. So if we think we can control the situation or the outcomes, then we will be safe. If I can just find an answer to this, then I'll have it all sorted out, you know. And really at the core of that is it's trying to keep us safe. It is a loving part of us. It's just sometimes overly sensitive or a bit misguided, you know. And, you know, I think adding this level of like self-compassion to that to begin with is something that's really useful. You know, it's just something, it's part of us that wants to be heard, you know. And sometimes it's just like annoying, but it means well. And we're going to talk about how to kind of work with it. And I think also part of having a busy mind, I've done this myself, and being naturally quite, you know, active mentally, is that we can also kind of start to identify with it. And we would say, oh, I'm an anxious person, I'm a stressful person, I am an overthinker, you know, and then it can become self-fulfilling. And while I think that there is like great empowerment in knowing yourself, self-inquiry is a massive part of yoga as well. You know, and we can create boundaries around that, knowing ourselves, but also I think it can be limiting. And I think it, you know, we don't have to accept that suffering, you know. There are ways that we can work with it, you know, and there's always context and there's always massive potential for change and for transformation. We just have to be willing to address it and do the work around it. This is the thing, which not everybody wants to do. You know, and it's very easy to distract, we self-medicate, you know, but often it just comes back, and it comes back louder, and it wants to be seen, it wants to be heard, and it will be. So the best way is to find ways to manage it, you know, and this is why a personal yoga practice can be so useful, you know, and really the point of this whole talk is to encourage that, to find these personal practices that will work for you. And also with it being Ayurveda, it's very personalized to, you know, it can be a bespoke practice for each individual unique person. So finding the most suitable ways to kind of develop these practices and tools. So yoga, obviously they wouldn't use the term overthinking, but they would use, I mean, they would say the monkey mind, you know. So it is this concept of movement in the mind. And the second verse in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali is, yoga is the cessations of the fluctuations of the mind. Like that is, you know, first page, that is what it's designed to do. It's designed to calm, you know, I think about it like the lottery ball machines, these ping pong balls, and the job of yoga is to bring it down. You know, in my first yoga teacher training, you know, they taught us the goal of the class is to bring mental activity down. Doesn't really matter what you do, like that is the goal, is to bring mental activity down. And so these fluctuations, or also they would be called vrittis of the mind. So this would be thoughts, feelings, opinions, projections, misconceptions, memories, you know, all of this stuff that's kind of constantly, endlessly moving around inside the mind. And so also it states that once we can calm all of that ping pong balls, we can witness our true self, you know. So yoga wise, like I said, it was designed to do this, really. It was designed to bring the activity down. And it does that through working with the nervous system. So, you know, through yoga asana, through breath work, meditation, daily routines, lifestyle changes, you know, we can slowly start to spend more time in the parasympathetic side of the nervous system. So this would be the rest and digest, as opposed to the fight or flight, the sympathetic. And it can also build resilience, so we can go between the two, which we have to do, and that is a healthy way to do things. But we don't want to get stuck, you know. So it can kind of help to build that resilience from stress as well. You know, and these are the elements that do work and do the job. But again, we just have to do it. We have to find something that works, because it's not one fits all really with yoga. It is for everybody, but it, you know, it has to be adapted for each individual. So yeah, so when we kind of are constantly living in the fight or flight state, which a lot, maybe we've gone through periods of time where we've just been there the whole time, or, you know, low levels of that, you know, how we view the world is different as well. We tend to be more negative. We tend to act out of fear. The body is reacting to this also, digestion, IBS, hormones, immune system. You know, it is a mind-body constant psychosomatic system that is working all together. And you might have experienced, so you might have noticed if you have a physical sensation that will then trigger a thought, or a thought that will then trigger a physical feeling. Maybe you might think something and then your stomach drops, you know, that kind of like automatic connection that you can feel. And I would say yoga also kind of encourages a sensitivity to the subtle movement within the physical body, so that we can kind of identify that and separate from it. So rather than, you know, feeling that stomach ache and then going into a stress spiral and being like, oh, you know, I need to quit my job, or I need to do this, I need to do that, blah, blah, blah. We can just be like, all right, I just had a coffee, my stomach's reacted to that. And, you know, we can just let it be that, you know, so we can kind of see things a bit more clearly, see things as they are. And one of the yamas we're talking here in the 8 limbs of yoga, also from this one I was talking about at the beginning, the Yoga Sutras, the classic. One of the yamas, the first limbs, is satya, which is truthfulness. And I mean, they're quite layered in their meanings, but part of this is kind of about what's real. So in a moment, being able to say, okay, well, what is the reality of the situation? Do I need to put all this mental activity into it, or can I just, is it quite a simple answer, simple solution? What is real? What is the reality in this situation? And what can I let go? So that's something that I found super useful. Another one of the yamas, which is the 5th yama, you don't have to worry about the technical terms here. I know it's quite a lot with the philosophy, but again, from the 8 limbs. And this is clinging. So attachment. Again, they talk about this a lot in Buddhism, non-attachment. So I'm just going to, my dog's just like scratching over there. Non-attachment, right? So this is what I find very useful when I become aware that I'm in a thought loop or really holding on to something. I can even feel this in my face when I become aware. I'm really like, I'm thinking. I'm really clinging on to something. And in that moment, can there be a bit of space around it? So can we let go of that clinging, that attachment to whatever it is that we think we need to be holding on to so tightly, and let there be a bit of expansion around it? So in this case, I think of it as like a wide lens where it's like a drone, like I come out of this space, even physically tense around the face, the jaw, and just create space. And I do that throughout the day. It's just like, I'm in my head. And then it's like, can we just let some space come around it? So contract, expand. So that's something that I've also found very useful from the yoga philosophy. And so Ayurveda, if you don't know, this is the sister science of yoga. So it's translated as the knowledge of life. It's kind of similar to like an Indian traditional Chinese medicine. There's some overlaps there, but the Indian one. And Ayurveda looks at the person as a whole. So each with our own constitution made up of the elements. So air, vata, fire, pitta, and earth, kapha. And so in Ayurvedic terms, we would say that anxiety or overthinking, a lot of mental activity would be an imbalance of vata, air, which makes sense, right? Because it's up in the head, it's moving, constantly moving. And you might also be vata in your own constitution as well. You could be vata in your constitution, and then you can also go through times of more vata energy. So stressful periods, you might be moving house, literally moving things can be quite a vata, energy. Last few years have been pretty vata with everything just up in the air. And also with women before the period comes, that can be an increase in vata as well. Also when women have just given birth, things like this. So yeah, this kind of leads on to my story, because I am mainly completely vata. I have a little bit of fire, but like it's mainly all air. And actually also when doing my astrology chart with Martina, that also showed that I had a lot of air in my astrology chart as well, if you're into astrology. So that made sense, because I was like, oh, right, okay, there's just a lot of air movement there. So mentally, yes, physically, also I do kind of like to move quite a lot. I'd also say I have a pretty sensitive nervous system. And so with the combination of that, I could get ungrounded pretty easily, kind of get blown away with all this wind. And so for me, kind of in my late teens and my 20s, living in England, binge drinking is part of the lifestyle. So I spent a lot of time kind of with beer fear, anxiety, up and down moods, hungover, worrying about what I'd said, what did I do? Did everybody hate me? Am I going to lose my job? Having an existential crisis every week. And then the cycle just kind of continued. So, that kind of went on for quite a long time. And then fixing the fatigue through coffee, smoking cigarettes, junk food, literally adding stimulus onto, high vata already. So, and I mean, also just modern life is quite vata fast paced. So I just felt generally quite overwhelmed and a bit all over the place a lot of the time. So with a mixture of all of those things, I had a really kind of messy mind, you know, and personally, I would ruminate a lot. Yes, and I found it quite difficult to tell what was my own thoughts, and you know, with all the outside noise that I would also be experiencing. And then, yeah, during stressful times, this would also intensify. And I used to find it funny because people would always say, "Oh, you're so chilled," and because I think I had so much mental activity going on inside, I was actually kind of withdrawn. So people were like, "Oh, you're just like so chilled out," and I was just like really not. People would talk at me and I couldn't eat. I just remember people's lips moving and my mind was just like, da, da, da. I was not taking in anything. I couldn't focus. I couldn't be present, you know, in this is in like the highest times, but it literally took all my energy. I'd just go home after work and I would just like sleep because I was just exhausted. I know some people find it difficult to sleep, but my experience was that I was just so tired from just literally just my mind going in overdrive. And so, yeah, I kind of lived like that for a while. It also, I found, spiked a lot of social anxiety because I found it quite hard to be natural or authentic because there was just so much, you know, worry or stuff going on, like, oh, what do they think of me? Am I going to say the wrong thing? Picking up on other people's energy as well. So it was just, yeah, a lot to kind of manage. Kind of felt like a full-time job in itself. And I didn't have any tools then, not really. I was self-medicating, I guess you would say, with the binge drinking each week. You're like, oh, can't wait to feel better again. And then obviously the ultimate, you know, impending crash comes down. So this is when I came to yoga and I was just really drawn to it. It wasn't really a massive thing then. Maybe this was like when I was about 25, so like 10 years ago. But, you know, I was seeking something and it took me a while. I had, you know, tried a few different kinds of classes. I did Kundalini at the beginning and then Hatha. But really for me, once I started the pranayama practice, doing breath work, that was when it kind of made sense to me. And I was like, this is what it does. You know, for me, this is what it does. And at first, I actually found it quite difficult to have a quiet mind because I found it quite a little bit scary, I guess, you know, from that illusion of trying to control everything through thinking about it all the time, to then be in a space where I wasn't doing that. I felt a little bit unsafe, actually, because I was like, well, if I'm not thinking about all these things, you know, is everything going to go wrong and fall apart? So I had to kind of go in and out of it a little bit. And then over time, it just gets easier and you can spend time there longer. But at first it was a process. You know, you think that you're going to lose control, basically. So we have to find trust in that. But it was the game changer, really, that kind of pranayama practice. You know, I still had a bit of mental chatter, but it was just like mute, you know, and I could just separate from it a little bit more and made just everything just so much easier. I was literally just out of my own way. I could like do tasks quite easily without overthinking it. I could, you know, speak to people in a really natural way where I wasn't just, you know, overthinking each next thing that I'm going to say in the conversation and all that kind of stuff. You know, and so when people say things like, oh, don't overthink it, or, you know, just be present, you know, I just think it's just, you know, you just can't always just do that. It's not a switch that you can just flick, you know, especially to begin with, especially when that vata energy is high. You're not just going to be like, oh, I'm suddenly just in the moment. I'm all zen. I'm totally present. It's just, it's, you know, a process and we need to practice it. We need to get used to being there also. And so this is what the practice can do, really, is just give us that baseline, you know, that baseline where the ping pong balls have just like settled down. And then from there, that is when we can work. You know, we can see what thoughts are repeating. We can look at the patterns that are unhelpful. We can see what we're clinging on to and just give it all like a bit of space. So that's kind of my experience. Oh yeah, and something I wanted to mention was a friend of mine was saying the other day, kind of a process of healing or process of growth that she always kind of tells students is first is awareness. So first we become aware that maybe we're overthinking, maybe we have a lot of mental activity. The second would be self-compassion. So we, maybe remember that fact that this is actually something that's a protection mechanism that is trying to help us out in its own weird way. And then from there comes empowerment. When we can take back a bit of control and be like, okay, I see that that's there. I see it's trying to help me, but I don't need to give it all my energy. I can take back some control over that. And a great practice that she's actually a Buddhist teacher, saying I like these Buddhist teachers, Tara Brach. She has a practice called RAIN, which is, she calls it a practice of radical compassion. So this would be, it's a tool for mindfulness and compassion to yourself. So basically, maybe when we're in a state of overthinking or a lot of, high mental activity, first would be to recognize what's happening. So that would be the R. And then A, allow the experience to just be there as it is. Yeah, allow. I, investigate. So be curious, be interested, and doing that with care as well. And then N is to nurture that with self-compassion. This I've actually linked to in the email that you'll get tomorrow as well, which goes to her website. But I found that, again, once we have a little bit of downtime with the mental activity, and then we can kind of do this kind of thing where we can look at it and be like, okay, what's happening here? Can I add some kindness to myself? Can I just be curious as to what's happening without adding too much emotional, strength to it? But yeah, I mean, she does so much amazing stuff, all her books, and she has so much content, YouTube, her website, there's just so much stuff. So I would definitely recommend checking her stuff. She's a Buddhist teacher and also a psychologist. So her stuff has just been life-changing for me. And so practical stuff, what can we do? So as I said, it does depend, a personal practice, you can really tailor it, to your needs, and you can tailor it around your menstrual cycle. You can tailor it around your personal constitution, depending on how much vata you have, or all the other elements, whatever you're made of, and also your current life situation. And this is, we could do this in one-to-one settings as well, one-to-one yoga settings, where we could create a personalized yoga daily routine. But this is just some general stuff that kind of would work for most people. So vata being air, like attracts like, and opposites will balance. So air, we need earth. We need to bring it all back down, grounding. Sorry. So food-wise, this would mean things like, basically things that just feel that bit heavier. So things that you might eat in the autumn time, say. So root vegetables, stews, warm foods and oily foods, because vata is dry also. So that is, anything oily is good. Sorry, my dog's barking. So I'm just going to scream the cat and see what she's like. Yeah, she's got a lot of vata energy. So stewed apples is really good. A really great breakfast one. That's my favorite. Stewed apples with cinnamon, oats, curries. Also, if you eat meat, it's a good time to maybe eat a little bit more meat, something that's a bit more dense, and things that feel comforting, things that are like literally smooth, oily, comforting, making sure also we eat enough. Often women especially don't eat enough. That is going to put your hormones out as well. So, and then, obviously if we've not eaten enough, we feel that, airy headed, again, more air. So making sure we eat enough, eating little snacks throughout the day, eating with a schedule also is good. Vata really works well with a schedule, daily routine, limiting alcohol, like I said, and also caffeine. So I find just switching to decaf really does the job, because I get my little caffeine. There's a little bit of caffeine in there, but it's not, I'm quite sensitive to coffee. Also, if you want to drink coffee, I even do this with the decaf, is you can put coconut oil in it. So again, it just adds that smooth oiliness. And it takes away that spiky edginess of like coffee, if you know what I mean, that kind of spikiness that it can make you feel. And also for evenings, you could drink milk with cinnamon, a pinch of salt, and honey. And that's a really good one for helping promote sleep as well. And that's just a nice kind of comforting drink. Also golden milk, which is similar. That also has, it's cinnamon, turmeric, black pepper, honey. Maybe I could put the recipe for this also in the email, and salt as well. Magnesium also is a good supplement for sleeping as well. If you're, I know overthinking gets a lot of people at nighttime, so promoting good sleep can be a good way to start. And having a nice wind down in the evening, you know, like setting aside a time, you know, time aside to wind down and have, you know, a bit of time for yourself. And so activities we could do, self-massage is a big one in Ayurveda. So that can be a nice thing to do. Again, maybe in that space at the end of the day, have a shower, and then you can just use, I like to use coconut oil, and you can just put a towel out and you can just oil yourself. Helps to go downwards as well in strokes. If you're, if we're vata, you know, experiencing high vata, downward strokes on the arms, the legs, the belly, torso. Coconut oil is really nice for that. Again, because it's super oily. Making sure we have some structure, routine, getting some natural light as soon as you can. Exercise, you know, these kind of, a lot of this is like classic stuff that we always tell ourselves to do. Social time also, but social time with people that really calm your nervous system down. You know, people that make you feel, you know, you co-regulate with, yeah. Being in nature, having a calm, quiet space, clean, you know, a tidy, non-cluttered space also. And social media. Social media is such a vata thing because it's constantly moving. You know, it's like scroll, scroll, scroll. It's video, you know, it's like literally doesn't stop moving. So if you've already got that mental activity going on, you know, it's just, you can see how that would just like add to it anyway. And we all know that it kind of, how it makes us feel. So social media is like a really big one. There's a good app called Freedom, which you can get, which is, can put a timer on it. Because, you know, let's be real, it's an addiction. So sometimes actually putting a block on it can be quite good. So I've used this Freedom app, which I think you get 6 free goes, and then you have to pay something. But I find that's quite good because you can just put a block on it from like 9 p.m. to 9 a.m. or something like that. Or maybe just that evening time is what you could do, just literally block it. And maybe also avoiding blue light. I have actually glasses that are like anti-blue glare for just the evenings when you're looking at your laptop. Again, because we live in the real, you know, we live in modern life, it's going to happen. So the blue glasses can be quite good just for like reducing the glare, maybe 2 hours before you go to bed. And then a personal practice. So a personal yoga practice. So this could be something maybe you do in the morning. Maybe you can just slot little bits in throughout the day. I think at the beginning, especially if you do have the, you know, a lot of constant mental activity, setting a little bit of time aside every day is good to get into a routine of it. So really, you know, it does take a little bit of time to really see the effects and for it to be long lasting, you know. And I would say with this, one of the big main things that I used to do is overthink it. I'd be like, okay, I make a massive list. I need to do this, I need to do this, I need to do this, and I need to do it then. And I need to, you know, maybe add in more of this. Am I not doing enough of that? You know, and it just becomes another thing to worry about. So just pick a few things, keep it super simple, keep it at a realistic time. You know, I used to always say an hour, but sometimes I'm like, it's half an hour, you know, that is realistically going to work. And so good practices to do would be, especially at the beginning, if you want to do some movement, yoga asana, you could start with sun salutations. Really good way just to move with the breath. It becomes a moving meditation. You could do sun salutation A 3 times, maybe B twice if you want to. I mean, sun salutation B is actually quite hard. So see what you want to do. But that sun salutation A is a good one to start with. Even just doing that 3 times is a good way to just get in the body, start moving with the breath. You know, you can feel your feet on the floor. Balancing postures also are good. So things like tree pose can be quite good because we have to kind of draw the energy down through to the feet, where we're really connecting the feet to the ground. Also just rolling around, rolling on the ground, literally being on the ground is going to bring down that energy as well. Mantra, this is what I wanted to bring in as well. Mantra is a really nice, it's a nice one to have in your personal practice. So maybe in your set time, but it's also a nice one that you can just bring in throughout the day. So I have actually in the email as well tomorrow got a playlist of my favorite mantras. But you know, it's music, so you can just listen to it on your way to work. You could listen to it as you're walking around. It's something you can, it's something that's quite easy to pop into your daily life. And so mantra means like mind and release. So again, it's kind of meant to be a meditative thing, you know, and it's chanting, singing, and it's not about being good at singing. You can even just do it internally. Although singing outwards is good for the vagus nerve, and that stimulates the parasympathetic nervous system also. But you can do that even just humming is a nice way to do that as well. So mantra is a meditation that uses repetitions. So again, it kind of feeds to this loop. If we're prone to looping, mantra is really good because it's doing the same thing. You know, and I find this very useful for times when I have found that I'm looping, I just pop the mantra in instead, and I switch whatever I'm thinking about to the mantra, because it doesn't really matter what it is. You know, it just, you may as well put something that's going to be less anxiety inducing in there, if that makes sense. And I remember even doing this as a kid, kind of intuitively, when I watched a scary film and I couldn't stop thinking about it, I would just start singing pop songs, like just not stop, just singing the pop songs that I knew over and over in my head. And it always reminds me of that. So there's a mantra that I use that I really like, which is a Lakshmi mantra. It's just a goddess that I was kind of drawn to, and I like her mantra. So again, you can just choose whichever mantra you like. You could use the playlist maybe, and just choose one maybe that you listen to a couple of times a day. It gets stuck in your head, and then you can just pop it in whenever you need to. Or you can physically listen to it, you know, if you just want to draw the mind somewhere else, just go and listen to the mantra, or just do the little brain swap. So mantra, yeah, that's a really good one. And then also journaling, I would say brain dumping is really good as well, especially if you've got a lot of air. Just writing, just free writing without thinking about it, just blah, 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 blah. As soon as you feel a little bit overwhelmed, just write it all down. I found that to be also very enlightening as well, reading back over stuff that just comes out. It can be kind of a nice, it's self-inquiry also, you know. So definitely journaling. And then these are 2 other practices that I wanted to do, which are, I would say, super good for most constitutions. And for me, my go-to one, if I have like hardly any time, this is the one that I would always do. I'd say doing 10 of these is a bit of a game changer, but it takes practice. When I used to first do it in classes, I felt a bit clunky, but with practice, this has been a very effective one. So we'll do this one together. There's also a video that's in the email tomorrow, so don't worry too much. So just finding your seat here. If you've got a little pillow, you can do it sitting down. If you're just sitting down, it's not anything too strenuous. Yeah. Okay, so this is Nadi Shodanan. You might have done this before. So we're going to use the hand, and you're just going to put down the first 2 fingers of the right hand. So you have like the ring finger, the little finger, and then the thumb, like a little claw. Nice. Okay, so to begin with, we're going to close off the right nostril with the thumb. And then we're going to inhale through the left for 4, count of 4. So 4, 3, 2, 1. You're going to block the left nostril with the ring finger. And then you're going to exhale out through the right. 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, back in through the right. 4. Block the right, release the left, out through the left for 4. In through the left for 4. Block the left, out through the right. 4. In through the right for 4. Block the right, and then out through the left. And just once more, in through the left for 4. Block the left, and then out through the right for 4. And then you can just let that go. So you might have done that before. That's just like a little taster, but, and like I said, at first I used to find it quite clunky when I first started doing it, but with practice, it's super effective. And we're just doing in for 4, out for 4 here. You can also, with time, extend the exhale to double. But there's a video that will be in the email, so you can follow the video. And yeah, with time, it's really effective and suitable for most kind of constitutions and stuff. So I would say that's a really good one to do. I mean, there's just so much. There's so much that you can include. So again, if you wanted to do a one-to-one, this is something that we could work on, and we can add in things. Or you can just ask me and I can maybe suggest some of the simple breath works. Also, somatic movement is kind of quite a nice thing to add in. That was something I was going to share. We'll do that just quickly, actually. So when I'm saying somatic movement, obviously movement is kind of somatic because it's, of the body, but this is kind of where we use the body as an anchor point. So literally drawing the energy out of the mind, and in Tantra, they would say using the body as a tool for awakening. So the body is very much part of your practice, so we can like be in our hand. I've done practices where I've been in my liver, in my heart, like just using the body as an anchor. So we'll just do a super simple one. If you've got space to lie down, we're just going to lie with the feet, so the knees bent, feet flat on the floor. Yeah. And then from here, if you have space, put your arms out wide and head back. No. Okay, so here we're going to start to just roll the knees side to side. So you're just going to let the knees drop over to the right, and then let the knees drop over to the left. So you're kind of just pivoting on the feet. Nice. And then just adding on to this, when you drop your knees to the side, let your head roll. So you just roll in the back of your head to the other side. So for example, my knees are right, my head's left, and then it's going to switch. So again, this is a good one. We're on the floor, literally rolling on the floor. It's a good one for grounding. And then adding on an extra element here, we can use the breath also. So as we inhale, we can bring the legs up. Exhale, the legs go down. And so we have these kind of 3 parts here. The knees, the head, and then the breath. So just take a few more like this in your own time. Legs one way, head rolls the other way. Nice, and then we'll just come back up to the center. And we can just squeeze the knees into the chest here. Maybe have a little rock side to side. And then we'll bring ourselves back up to seated. Thinks it's playtime. Okay. And so that would be an example of something that's quite somatic. And again, very grounding. A nice one to do in the evening, perhaps, as well, as part of that kind of bedtime routine. Yeah, so I mean, again, there is so many things we can add in. You know, and also something they talk about in Ayurveda is that it's all kind of a weather system. So it is all ever changing, you know, and a quote from Tara Brach also is, you know, we're not the waves, we're the ocean. So there is always this movement and there is always change. But it's not all out of our control. You know, we do have some agency over that when we have tools. And also another good thing is playing, like playing as an adult, doing something that's just fun for the sake of fun is also something that's very, very good for just getting ourselves out of our head and into the body. So whatever it is that you find fun, just guilt-free, allow yourself to just go and like have some playtime. And yeah, so that, well, we've gone over time a little bit as well, but there's just so much stuff. So some of this stuff is going to be in the email that Katrin's going to send out tomorrow with the recording. And also my details are there. So if you wanted to do a one-to-one, we can create a personal practice. I have a few people that I do this with one-to-one once a month. And we work on a personal practice that's kind of designed around their own constitution and their lifestyle and all the rest of it. So you can get in touch with me there'll be email and my WhatsApp as well. And then, yes, there's a mantra playlist, some podcast recommendations. There's a dosha test so you can find out your constitution. Tara Brach. I mean, there's just so many things I want to share, but maybe that's enough for now. And you can always ask me if you want more information on anything. So yes, and you can feel free to ask me any questions now if you like as well.
Thank you, Lucy, for all of that wisdom and those amazing tips. There was just so much and so many things that seem also perfectly doable and make so much sense. And I guess it's always a bit like this, no? When we get really good advice and it's just so sensible, you're just like,
yeah,
yes,
like, oh,
it's like a hell yes. And of course it does take quite a lot to implement it, because we are in that place where maybe everything is already too much and making changes is too much. So from my personal experience, I really can only highly recommend to work with somebody on a one-to-one basis just to get you kickstarted. It's such a great kickstarter so that you get to know where you are at at that moment and what it actually is that needs changing and what can be implemented, and to have somebody just help you implement something. And then before you know it, you will have developed a whole new routine and it will make a real shift. So yes, I can't recommend exploring that option with Lucy enough. Also, if you do want to maybe check her out a little bit more and get to know her before you make that commitment, she's got a couple of events coming up at Little Yoga Space very soon, together with Martina on the 2nd of October. It's a event where astrology and yoga meet, called You Goddess. And that's not just for women, I think that's for everyone, if I'm not mistaken. And then on Monday, very popular, on the 3rd of October, an event that happens once a month, Deep Rest, where we have Yoga Nidra and Reiki meet. So those usually get booked up fully. So if you want to check that out, and in the context of that kind of stressful lifestyle, that might just hit a sweet spot, as it's all about coming right back down from the craziness and from that monkey mind. So and that might be a nice way to meet Lucy in person. And if you then resonate with her, maybe you want to work with her, because Lucy, I think you said something really relevant here as well, that the overthinking is actually one of the mechanisms to keep ourselves safe, and to go to the quiet place might just not be that easy because it doesn't feel as safe. And that has everything to do with the nervous system, and the nervous system being overwhelmed. And we live in times that take so much bravery to show even up on a day-to-day basis to normal life, never mind anything that is a little bit more challenging. So, you know, it's so important to bring that compassion piece into it. It's okay to not find that so easy. That's why this mechanism is at play in the first place, and to be really self-compassionate about that. Everybody being here in this webinar and listening to this, or maybe listening to the recording, that's already an amazing step to even acknowledge, recognize. It's the R in rain, recognize where you might be at, and to allow maybe. So we're kind of actually already a couple of steps into the process, which is really beautiful. So thank you, Lucy, for sharing that and for creating this opportunity in this moment of practice, to kind of do this inquiry and this study as part of the practice. So thank you so much. I had a bit of an eye on the chat. There wasn't any particular questions coming in. This is your last chance. Those of you who are here live, if you wanted to ask a question. I did have a little question. I was wondering, when you were telling your story, Lucy, how you came to the practice yourself, how long did it take for you to actually suddenly feel a real effect from the practice, which I think was mostly pranayama, that got you sort of feeling quite different? Was it kind of lots of weeks, or was it literally from one day to the next, suddenly, boom, you felt that difference? How long did it take?
I would say that it's gradual, and I think that is something that people, don't like about yoga sometimes, is that they go to a yoga class and they're like, oh, I think they expect something profound to happen. I did this as well at the beginning, but over time, consistent practice, it works, but it isn't always like. Sometimes it feels like it's a light bulb moment, for sure. Definitely that does happen as well. But it is kind of gradual. But I always knew, I was like, there's something here.
Yeah.
And so I was just like, I just kept going back. But really, I think that was in my teacher training, because that was when I learned pranayama. So it just so happened that my teacher trainer was a really good pranayama teacher also. But the breath work definitely, and doing meditation also. I used to go to a Buddhist center and do meditation, and that, you can feel the effects of that, like straight away, more or less. But it took time, it does take time, and then it just becomes easier and easier, and you can access it a lot quicker, let's say.
I probably concur with that. I remember in the beginning, I was like, oh, I don't know, and it was kind of almost bothering me all a little bit, but there was a body wisdom, something inside of me that knew to stick to it. And then, I don't know, it will be a different story for everyone, but after some time, there is a boom, a light bulb moment, and you're like, okay, this is what this is about. So the magic will come. And then you're hooked and you'll never stop.
And then there's just so much. When I was writing this, I was like, oh, and then I can write about this, and it's just like, there's the depth of it just never, the learning like never stops. So once you're in, it's kind of lifelong. Thank you so much. Thank you everybody here for joining us today, this evening. I hope you also found this helpful. We have another webinar coming up later in October, and that will be with Hayley. Hayley will be back, who does acupuncture and acupressure. So she's always great at teaching those kind of points that you can actually work on yourself, on your own body, to help balance whatever we happen to be talking about, which we haven't decided yet. Keep an eye out on that. Hayley's webinars are always super fun and really practical, and you'll take something away. So that's coming up towards the end of October.
hopefully see you guys, those of you in Lisbon, sometime at the studio. You know where to find us. We'll see you again online. Thank you for joining us here this evening. Thank you, Lucy, once again for your time.
Yeah, no worries. But yeah, if anyone has any questions, just send me.
No question, but I just wanted to thank you for those tips and for having this workshop. It was really useful. And I hope to see you soon again.
Thank
Now
you.
I'm thinking, was it too much information? Now everyone's overthinking all the information.
Have a lovely evening, everyone. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.